1 John 4:17. Let's put it up there by itself. Love has been perfected. So we don't even have to mess with this. We don't have to tweak this. It's perfect. You can't fix it. You can't fix it by saying, oh, but. See, here's what you're leaving out, preacher. And people do this with this verse all the time. They go, oh, yeah, God's love, but. No, wait, it's been perfected. You don't get to say, God's love is perfect, but I got to give you a couple other things that is part of God's love, or you're going to mess this up because you're going to have God too loving. No, His love is perfected in this. If you can stand in judgment bold, you've comprehended the perfect love of God. If you can't stand at judgment bold because you believe as He is, so are you in this world, then we need to do some work on the perfect love of God. We need a revelation of God's perfect love. Let's talk day of judgment for a second. Contextually, it's very possible John's talking about an AD 70 judgment of the nations, an AD 70 judgment of the Mosaic system, because we know the New Testament is obsessed with an end of days scenario that by Hebrews 8 they felt was almost past them. You know, you get to the end of Hebrews 8, he goes, that which is fading away is ready to vanish. Okay, so it was either ready to fade away and did in their time, or that's the longest, slowest fade in the history of fades. All right, and so that, Paul said, we upon whom the end of the world has come. All right, end of the world. Not we, they, upon whom the end of the world has come. So they definitely believed they had a day of judgment that they were facing as a system, as a Mosaic system. And so if you wanted to make it literal in their timeline, John is saying, know that you're loved, know what Christ has done for you. When that day arrives, you don't have anything to worry about. You don't have anything to be afraid of. The world around you is afraid. You don't have to be afraid. Jesus told you all this stuff was going to happen. Lift up your eyes. It's going to happen. Don't freak out. You're okay. As He is, so are you in this world. But I think this one does you more good. And that is that you will appear before the judgment seat of Christ. Now, I personally believe we appear before the judgment seat of Christ every time we go before Christ. He is sitting at Mount Zion, where God, the judge of the saints, always lives. It's not as if God takes off His judge hat, puts it back on, off and on. No, He is our perfect judge. So I want to be judged by He who gives right justice. So that's why I appeal to Christ. I appear before that. But there's pretty heavy evidence that the New Testament writers believed there was going to be us standing in front of that in a spiritual sense as well, in the celestial. And what does that look like? Well, whatever it looks like, you can have boldness when it happens because perfect love has happened in your life. Why? Because as He is, so are you in this world. As He is what you are. So you don't have to freak out. So whatever the future judgment looks like, boy, I'm really scared of the judgment. Why would you be scared of the judgment? Perfect love casts out fear. You don't have anything to be afraid of if you've received the love of God. And the love of God is expressed in Christ. That's where the love of Christ, God, is manifested. So as we walk in Christ, that fear begins to dissipate. It begins to vanish from who we are. So, as He is, I want to dwell on this for a moment, so are we in this world. This is a great phrase to put into your vernacular. If you want to know a good Bible verse, this is one to have. Because as He is, so are we in this world. 1 John 4:17 means that whatever I see about Jesus now is exactly what I have now. So I need to learn to see Jesus now so that I can know what I am now. And here's where we kind of mess this up. We really, honestly, in Christian circles, only think of what He was. So let me focus on as He is, not as He was. Okay. And that, by no means am I saying we don't need to know what Jesus did in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That's opposite. We actually need to pay attention to Jesus in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and we need to do it probably way more than we are. But we tend to think of Jesus in past terms as Christians. And we tend to think of ourselves, give me the next one, so we are, not so we shall be. So I want you to look at these two things, because really this is, I'm just trying to break down what 1 John 4:17 says. As He is, so are we in this world. It's as He is, not as He was. It's so we are, not so we shall be. But here's kind of what we do in Christianity. We think of Jesus in past terms, and we think of us in future terms. Here's what Jesus did when he was on the earth. Here's what he looked like. Here's how he loved. Here's how he talked. Here's how he died. Here's how he raised from the dead. Here's me someday over in heaven. Here's what I'm going to have. Here's what I'm expecting from God. And that's not a whole lot of right here. And yet, where are you living? Right here. So it makes sense that if our Christianity isn't doing something right here, then all it's doing is looking backwards and looking forwards, and we're missing a bunch of stuff going on in front of us. That's also why a lot of people don't love life and see good days, because they don't love life at all. They just look back. Yesterday was better. Tomorrow's freaky. Yesterday was great. Tomorrow maybe it's hopeful. And they don't see what's going on in front of them. And walking this out, man, this is a journey. Every day you're in the faith is a journey. So think about as he is, not as he was. That leads me to two questions, and we're going to try to answer them. How is he? How are we? Okay? Very simple. Because to me, that's 1 John 4:17. As he is, so are we. Okay, well then, what is he? How is he? It's not just where is he, but what is it about Jesus now that's different than as he was? And what is it about me now that doesn't worry so much about what shall be? Because that's most of our faith, where we're going, that's about all we get asked about. Yeah. I walked out of church Sunday morning, preached a message on the foundation of the world. Christ the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. And I think trimmed the fat, man. It was like boom, 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 straightforward. And got to the door, shaking hands, shaking hands, shaking hands. Someone leaned over to me and goes, "But what about hell?" That was the only question they asked, just was, what about hell? And I gave my answer. They seemed pretty satisfied. We had a decent little conversation. But I was struck by the fact that most of the time, all we think about is out there. We don't think about what he has done to affect what I am. We just think about what he has done to affect where people are going. And we are saved for more than this. He did not say, "I've come that you might have life and that you might have it someday." Although I know life someday is part of eternity. But he did say, "I've come that you might have life, you might have it more abundant." So I want to have life more abundant. I can't do that if I'm freaked out. I can't do that if I'm scared of God. I can't do that if I'm worried about my spiritual future. So just accepting his love, accepting what he says.